Alright guys, this is the Geek Horizons podcast. I'm Aaron S.
I am Blue.
And I'm Faison.
Alright guys, and we're just continuing on with our many subjects in a hat. And somewhat, Blue's doing a little Jimmy, and Faison is going to pick the topic.
Yes, because we pick one topic out of the hat and spend 30 minutes talking about it.
Exactly.
Let's do this shit.
The way it was intended.
When should a game series call it quits?
Ooh, I like this one.
Oh.
Rough road.
Alright, who chose this one?
I did.
Who wrote it? Who wrote it?
Obviously.
If you don't know and you don't know, it's probably
You're
me.
2 for 2.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
Yeah, when should a game series call it quits?
This comes to a very, very difficult crossroads because there's the point where you're like, these games are starting to really suck. Mm-hmm. But you also feel at the exact same time, I really don't want this character to become part of my past.
I know.
You know, for me, I would have to say, like, Halo 3.
That should have been the end?
That should have been, well, at least Halo 4 should have been, if you gotta have a Halo 3.
Oh yeah, Halo 4 exists.
Yeah.
And that was so bad. It's gotta be that point where the story hits a crossroads where it's clear they don't really know where it's going.
True.
And you just don't have a reason.
But does it come to the point where you end that series like as that part of the series? For example, how Mass Effect ended at 3. Is it okay to continue Mass Effect but have it not be Shepard? Like when they were thinking about making an MMORPG out of it.
Yeah, I believe that would be alright. Because by Mass Effect 3, they had a really decent combat system down. They just lost some of what made the first two really good.
They lost the RPG part.
And you gotta wonder too, like pressure from EA, because we know EA puts so much pressure, and
EA is a bag of dicks.
Can we say that one more time?
EA is a bag of dicks.
Sorry. But I'm one of those people that take as much time as you need to make a game.
Yes. Bethesda, looking at you. Take as much time as you need.
But that's
how many was it? Wasn't it like almost 10 years or 8 years that it took to release Skyrim after Oblivion?
Like BioShock Infinite?
BioShock Infinite was a shorter period, but also took a long time. And it was good. And that's what they should do. Take as much time as you need.
But like the last game...
But the only way you can do that is if you got money.
But the last game, I waited for, and then I didn't care anymore, was actually Watch Dogs. Because originally it was supposed to come out with the PS4 launch, so I was so stoked. It looked great, but then they're going to push it all the way back to May, June, whenever it was. And my excitement meter was a 10 before. When it finally did hit, I didn't give a shit anymore. It's not like the new Godzilla where I'm always a 10. Even thinking about it right now, I'm a 10. Just thinking about it, I love Godzilla. But
I'm still waiting for it to come out.
I'm still waiting.
He's got a boner underneath the table just thinking about Godzilla.
Under the table?
Just under the table. Starts rising up.
Oopsies, I didn't mean to do that.
Sorry, just thinking about that giant piece of lizard.
That giant piece of lizard. But, I don't know, have you guys played Watch Dogs yet? I don't know.
Not yet.
I will say it had, the best open world I've had yet, as far as, like a Grand Theft Auto kind of city, just giving interaction control to players. But I don't know.
Have you played Saints Row 4?
I was going to say
Saints Row 4.
Have you played the fourth one, where you get superpowers?
Yes, I have.
That game has taken off on such a different direction.
I wanted to keep going just so we know where they're going to stop.
It was originally just an alternative to Grand Theft Auto, then it became just crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Bayonetta.
I want Saints Row 5 to be showing your character sitting in a chair, somebody walk up and be like, Mr. Supreme Ruler of the Universe? Yes. And just zoom out and show you're on this space station.
Yes.
And I have beautiful women
that is the continuation of Saints Row.
Yeah. And then you think back, if Samuel L. Jackson wasn't there to save me that first day.
The reason I actually wrote that bit and put it into the hat, I was thinking actually about Ratchet and Clank.
Mm-hmm.
I think all three of us have played it and loved it.
We love it.
And there gets to a point where they've had so many of them now that it seems like as the consecutive ones comes out, even if we like them, they're getting worse and worse reviews. And I'm wondering if maybe I like them just because I loved the original so much that I refuse to let go and realize it's a shitty game now, or...
You know, I think a lot of it has to do with Insomniac because they just feel like they really had this magic. I mean, like with the first PlayStation with Spyro. I loved the Spyro games. And
what kid didn't love Spyro?
I still have it.
That was a lot of kids' introduction.
I've got it on the PS3. That was the first PS1 game I ever played. It was the first Spyro. And, you know, I can't remember the name of that last Insomniac game they did, but I remember seeing it at E3 a couple years ago where it was like the 4 players, remember? And it was like you were fighting waves of enemies, and it was like
Was it the Ratchet and Clank one?
It wasn't Ratchet and Clank. It was like with actual people, and I'm gonna have to look up the name for it. And it looked fantastic. It looked like almost like a film. And then, like the following year, it was changed around completely, where it looked like a generic action movie. And you hear, and it was just flat. It was Fusion, I think. Fusion or Fuse? Yeah, Fuse.
Maybe. I've only played Tools of Destruction out of the new series and whatnot, and there's a part where I got stuck and couldn't get past it, so I stopped playing it for a while and just never went back. But when playing that one, I was like...
Fuse came out 2013.
Yeah, Fuse.
When I was playing Tools of Destruction, I'm like, this is literally the most literal sense of next-gen Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
It's HD prettiness with the same mechanics of Ratchet and Clank that made me love the first 3 games on the PlayStation 2.
I think the last one I actually played was A Crack in Time.
Yes, me too.
And you know, it's not that it was bad. Actually, I would argue that one was actually the most heartfelt and maybe the saddest of all of them.
I think it was one of the best.
That was the one with his people, right?
Yeah.
And
and it was
and he finally finds another Lombax, and it's just.
Yeah.
It's just hard and it's sad, but it's so good in that way.
And it closed the series off in such a way that you can stop right there. It's done, you know?
Yeah, that
you don't need to make
that could have been the end, but then 2 years later they ended up coming out with All for One.
Is that actually legit part of a story, or is that just here's a 4-player Ratchet and Clank for you to have fun with?
I think it's kind of like Deadlocked, how it is but it isn't.
Yeah,
it's part of the story, but it's not you wouldn't include it in his actual campaign storyline. Yeah. But it still happened in his life.
I have heard, I don't remember where I heard it, but I have heard of a remake of the original Ratchet and Clank where they're adding more things more depth to Captain Quark. And everything.
He needed more depth.
He needed more depth.
He needed more depth for that girth.
That girth. And that shin.
That could go so many wrong ways.
That extremely long shin.
No.
But they're still supposed to be making that film.
Yeah.
And movie's still supposed to be coming out. So
that's true.
Let's hope they do a
and
good
after
job
All
of
for One, they ended up having that one on Vita, the Full Frontal Assault. And I just remember that everyone hated it. I never got to play it, but everyone hated it. And so after that, they had, I think on PS3 again, they had Into the Nexus, and I don't know anyone that ever played it. I don't know a single person that ever picked it up. And they're supposed to have one coming out next year for PS4, but.
Here's the question for you.
So I mean, is it time to close up that series? I mean, if the last 2 games were pretty much dead in the water, I mean, I don't even know anyone that played them.
You know, I think we usually like to consider Pixar. I mean, Insomniac is kind of like the Pixar of gaming, or at least they were. And it seems like they lost...
Well, kind of, except for Resistance.
Yeah, Resistance. But did you play any of those?
Resistance, Fall of Man?
Yeah.
I played the first one. I goddamn love that game.
Really?
The first one...
I'm playing this and I'm like, it's like I'm literally in War of the Worlds.
Yeah, the first one was very interesting.
And it's hard, even on the easiest difficulty.
It was
so goddamn hard.
It was a difficult game.
It made me feel triumphant when I beat it.
It was very disturbing when you were walking through those halls and you would see people being injected with the stuff and turn into I mean, it was disturbing. But then the second one kind of
they Call of Dutied it.
Yeah, they Call of Dutied it. They kind of lost their momentum, and then the third one was just
it was just off.
It was it was, and it's not that it was bad. It was just really off its game. It felt like it really got away from what Resistance wanted, and I feel like that's kind of what Ratchet and Clank was doing too. It it started out as just this funny, silly kind of action game with massive guns and explosions and craziness.
Massive history about how Lombaxes were ancient power beings and all that.
Yeah, and their whole history. I mean, it was really cool.
In the first game, there was that mystery of you not knowing. You're just oh, he's just a little furry guy.
But then what? But
and
then
then
what?
in 2, you find the girl that looks like a Lombax, but like then you never see her
I
again.
love that girl.
But then it was
She
interesting.
disappears.
It was interesting. Was like in Crack in Time. Then you see what happened, like where Clank came from, and that was a really.
I have no idea. I don't remember the name of that Lombax or where he was from. I think I just called him the Liam Neeson of.
Hold on. His name was.
Because that's what he reminded me. He made me think of Liam Neeson the whole time.
Man,
Hey.
Yeah. Bad
it starts
cop.
with an A. I know his
Bad
name starts
cop
with an
His
A.
name was Bad Cop Lombax.
Bad Cop Lombax. But like speaking of old franchises, that should quit or not. I'm not sure if you guys have heard, but Sony is thinking about bringing back Crash Bandicoot.
Oh, they need. Oh,
Now, how would you feel about that? Like, imagine a modern day Crash Bandicoot.
I've played a modern day Crash Bandicoot. It's not fun.
It's not Naughty Dog anymore, right? They sold it, right?
No, Naughty Dog I think was absorbed into Insomniac, wasn't it?
No, I think they were still two
Naughty
different.
Dog's still making games because Naughty
they're-
Dog is
But I
still
think
doing.
aren't they under Insomniac now?
Well,
I'm not sure.
I believe. Well, the two always had such a really close connection. They used a lot of their software
Insomniac
together.
Well, they were
Naughty Dog.
PlayStation's forefront.
So they did partner, huh?
Yeah.
They were like the mass appeal PlayStation forefront games because, like, I think PlayStation and I think back to Resident Evil, but that's just me. I know there's a lot of people that don't play horror games.
Yeah, speaking of Naughty Dog and Insomniac, I totally forgot The Last of Us is under their brand.
Yeah,
Completely forgot about that. Yeah, and I mean, that was amazing all on its own.
That was like one of the best PS3.
And honestly, I still love Jak and Daxter.
Mhm.
Like,
Which
I still play it.
I was about to bring that up.
That was such a good... Like, it was a weird series because the second one felt like it was so different than the first. It was a completely different
The second
game.
one was my intro to the game, and I'm like, this is like Grand Theft Auto, but they're hovercrafts!
Yeah.
So I thought
It's like, even though it was so different than the first game, that it was... like completely took that character out of everything he knew, and it just progressed him so much. I mean, by the time the third game rolled around, that game was amazing.
Seriously, the 2 and 3 were really strong. I loved both of those games. The first one was really good too.
I was always out of ammo. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I swear I could
Start
walk,
just hitting them with the gun.
I could just walk out of the room and be out of ammo.
Just to feel like you're in a place, like an environment that is just so foreign and so different yet
Yeah, and it's
familiar.
as foreign
The
to
second
you
one
as
just
it is
felt
to
like
him.
I was like an indentured servant to Jabba the Hutt, like the
Seriously.
entire
Yeah.
game, and I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah, when you're working for that fat guy in the hover thing,
Yeah.
man, the hover chair, I thought that was great.
So great.
Yeah.
That's the thing because we haven't seen a Jak and Daxter game since the racing one. I don't think.
I think
Yeah.
like the New Frontier or something was the last one.
We haven't seen one in a while. And in the concept of should video game series is like when should they die out or when should they quit? I think, and I know this is like a technical impossibility because there's no possible way a company can guarantee that they'll come back to it later, but they need to give us time in between. Like, say they brought what's an old video game series that died out? Say they give us finally a new Star Fox. If they give us a new Star Fox, I'm sitting here like, it's been so goddamn long.
I
You like when it comes to like,
I want to say they attempted to bring a new Star Fox not long ago.
No, it wasn't the new one. It was the N64 one they brought to the 3DS.
Oh, okay, there you go.
But since then, the last new Star Fox was Star Fox, I think, Full Assault is what it was called, or something like that, and it was the sequel to Star Fox Adventures, which everyone got hates.
with the dinosaurs,
More,
right? Yeah.
more Conquer.
Here's the thing, like
Don't you dare!
More Conquer.
Fuck Microsoft!
hey, give me more Banjo-Kazooie.
Fuck Microsoft!
Banjo-Kazooie that doesn't suck.
I know. Which I know
Nuts
Microsoft.
and bolts.
I know Microsoft is saying they're trying to bring Banjo-Kazooie back, but with like Kinect, it's like Banjo-Kazooie is like my favorite game when I was a little kid, and just to see it just tortured and turned around into something else, It's
like Microsoft. You can give us Banjo-Kazooie, but first you have to give it back to Nintendo.
Yeah.
But honestly, the Kinect on the one, I haven't had any problems with. I've actually been really impressed with how spot on it's been.
Really?
I mean, I don't. My lazy ass really doesn't want to get up to use it, but when I have used it, it's actually been a lot more responsive than the old one. That being said, I like the voice commands. Sometimes that's pretty cool. like with Crimson Dragon, it's pretty cool to be able to order your team of dragons around, but other than that...
What if they brought back Panzer Dragoon?
I never played that.
Actually, Crimson Dragon was a spiritual successor to that.
Oh, really? It was?
Yeah, it's
I didn't know that.
a downloadable game on One.
You see that? Yeah, the original was such a fun game.
And I gave it a pretty mediocre review, and it's not that it's fun to play. There's just no real substance to it.
Yeah.
And it's like even the characters have no idea what's going on. All you know is there's some giant, fat, ugly dragon that's creepy as shit, and it's like spreading a disease and people are dying.
Oh boy.
Other than that, nobody really knows what's going on.
You know what franchise I want to see back, and we probably won't just because Disney is being so weird, and is Jedi Academy. Because I've been replaying Jedi Academy, and I want a good Star Wars game. And
a good Star Wars game is coming.
Star Wars Republic Commando 2 would be nice.
I want that. I still want that.
The new Battlefront is coming.
Battlefront's
I intend on losing so many
and
hours of my life to that.
What the hell happened to Star Wars, that one where you play a bounty hunter? It was like level...
Bounty hunter?
Star Wars Bounty Hunter?
No, not Star Wars Bounty Hunter. It was like... It was...
I love that. That was my first PlayStation 2 game.
Oh, I love that too. But it was like... it was last year at E3, I believe, they showed this footage from it. So then when Disney bought LucasArts, this game just kind of went underground. And it was... You're gonna have to look this up for me. But it was a really interesting new IP, and then it just kind of went dead.
It's the same thing that I had to say when everyone freaked and panicked about Disney buying Marvel, while Marvel was still making all of the like part 2 of movies, like Iron Man 2 and whatnot and everything. Mm-hmm. Everyone's like, Disney's bought Marvel, they're gonna make it like rated G. And then Captain America came out and he throws a guy into a plane propeller, and everyone's like, ah! Blood.
That's what I don't get. We always give the
everyone's like Disney's going to make this horrible. And I'm like, Disney is not stupid. They're not going to buy this $1 million franchise and make it a $0 franchise. They're going to make it.
Wait a minute. I had plenty of negatives to say about the Avengers and plenty of negatives to say about.
Yeah, but you hated all of them.
That's because I actually read comic books.
Yes, I know you do.
Yeah, but that started before Disney bought it.
Yeah.
The movie started before Disney bought it. Disney just came out and was like, all right, we know what you're trying to do. You're trying to market it to people who haven't read the comics. We can help you.
Yeah.
It would be fine if they did it so that it played to both. Instead, it was like...
It's so hard to do that in a 2-hour time span, and they can't make it longer because no one will watch it. You could.
Let me do it.
You see, but making it longer would pander to one of the two sides.
That's always like...
Which they make less money from pandering to only the comic book
That's
fans.
always the slippery slope you always got to consider. Is you got to give enough to people who don't know anything about this that they can understand it, but enough for the hardcore fans who do know this stuff very well.
Because a lot of money goes into making it, they need a lot of money to come out of it, so they need people who aren't like reading issue 175 of, I don't know, The Flash Part 50.
I just really hope they do Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch right in the next movie.
You leave my man out of this.
Just give me Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver done right in the next movie.
It's the Flash is DC.
You know, well, yes, the Flash is DC.
I was making a Disney thing.
Exactly.
We don't have to worry about it yet.
Not yet.
I want Disney to buy DC just so they can still never do it.
Yeah, it was probably 13.
I think so.
Yeah, it was like level 13,
Because I was going to say, I remember it being something that I'll never be able to remember without Googling it.
Mm-hmm, yeah, it was supposed to be like the 13th level on Coruscant, which actually I thought was interesting because I've been watching the Clone Wars series, the new animated series they have on Netflix, and they actually do show off that area where the game was supposed to take place in. It's like
I still miss Republic Commando.
Me too.
That game
I never played it all the way past like the first 10 minutes.
It was such a great
I only
game.
had it for 10 minutes.
It was so good, and like the shitty thing is at the end of it, like they leave you on such a cliffhanger, but then it's like, now that you're done playing the game, go buy the books. No, I want to play. I want to save my friend. Don't give me this.
I don't know why they couldn't make another one of those. It was such.
Maybe it didn't sell well.
It was.
I think it got kind of mediocre reviews, but it was.
Plus, it came out around the time where Halo's popularity was starting to get crazy, wasn't it?
I think it was right before.
It was a first-person space shooter around the time Halo 2 came out, and Halo 2 was like the kick point.
And LucasArts was doing like,
which is funny because I don't know. You guys have played Halo 1, right? Like that was not an amazing game. It was okay. And so they hyped up Halo 2, and I was like, Halo.
Hey, see,
hyped up Halo 2, and I was like,
I've got better experiences playing the first Halo than I do Halo 2. Because by Halo 2, because
Halo was good, but it was It felt like it didn't do anything new to the shooter genre.
See, my biggest problem with Halo 2 was the E3 footage they showed us the first time of it. It was like first gameplay. It was huge. There was it was in Africa. There was this giant station, and all this action going on. And then you play the game. You're on Earth, and it's just so bland and boring, and it's just it just seems soulless.
Really, I really liked it. I thought Halo 2 was it was definitely better than Halo 3.
I like Halo 3.
Yeah. I thought Halo 2 was better than 3. Heck, 4 was better than 3.
Halo 2 was definitely better
Reach
than Halo 3.
was better than 3.
Yeah.
ODST was better than 3.
ODST is the greatest Halo game ever made. I will stand by that firmly. ODST kicks every other Halo's ass.
Reach was pretty
Bring
cool.
back Firefly.
I'm playing ODST. I'm sneaking around because I'm the only survivor of my troop, and there's piano playing as I'm hiding in the shadows.
And
from
you
the
actually need health packs now.
Yeah,
you're not a Spartan.
You get the shit beat out of you so fast in that game.
But I will say, I did really enjoy Halo Reach just because I read the books and I always wanted to see Reach, and I just love that last scene where you're just fighting until you die.
Yeah, that game was artistically so well done, and even though
that was Bungie's last, wasn't it?
Yes,
I think
Reach.
so. Yeah, that was their farewell.
That was their last.
And then, and it was great because even though you didn't really see a lot of your other team a lot, by the time they died, you felt so horrible because it's this picking off of these last people, the only people that you have, and it was hard. It was, especially if you read the books, it was.
Yeah,
Halo's got a
great story.
They do. They have an excellent
It has a really
story.
good.
I think it's kind of shameful that they haven't actually made this game the story in the game as good as they make the story on the side.
I mean, it's really.
When do we ever see the other Spartans
Linda,
that's
Kelly? That can be said about a lot of video game franchises. Where
because
the books have more space to go through to get story out. Books without a story. The books you can't go through it.
The Resident Evil books were fantastic too. Good God.
Non-canonical. All of them non-canonical. It's sad about that, but the thing is, they
were so good.
That's the thing is with a video game, you can't just be story based. You can't. You have to have gameplay.
But you've got to have characters at least that are good enough to move the plot.
The very first Crash Bandicoot had almost zero character in it. That sold bajillions.
I think they're also
the first Spyro had character, and Spyro was the only character. Not really any others were memorable in the slightest.
Yeah, but he was a good character because it was
and the story was you gotta just go save dragons.
Yeah, you have to go save your dragon friends and beat Nasty Nork.
That's the thing. Most of these early PlayStation era games, the stories weren't the big driving factor. It was we have 3D technology.
Yeah, and I gotta say, the thing is that you don't need a complicated story if your character is
likable.
Yeah, is likable, even just remotely likable.
Yeah,
I would say simplicity is a really good thing if you know how to use it right. Some people really hate simplicity, but if you can get it right and make it easy to understand, and just.
I mean, I know we.
And if you want to get into it, and you can see the complexity of it, you can, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I know we brought this up in the last one, but Metroid. I mean, they didn't need a complicated character. They didn't need to make her anything more than just a badass who goes around killing shit.
A silent badass, and the fact that she's silent makes her a complicated character because we don't know why she's silent.
And in was it 2? Yeah, in Metroid.
She can't talk because her boobs are too big. She can't breathe.
And when you just pick up bits and pieces of this weird, random information, I mean, that's just what makes it so neat. Now, of course, you can actually have too much of that, like in Prototype, where it just became confusing and you had no idea what was going on.
That was a weird one. I never played the second one. Have you?
I have it, never played it. Just because I don't like it when they change characters. Like, I never have. I've always thought that was a really lame way of moving a series forward.
I will say Ultimate Hulk was great. Because that's ultimately what that game
Ultimate Hulk was the Venom portion of Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, because I'm not sure if you guys played it.
I liked the gameplay of Prototype. Like, that was the first time I've ever actually felt like I had powers. Like, you could... when you hit the ground running at, 100 miles an hour, and the ground is breaking up beneath you because you're running so hard and so fast, that was amazing.
Yeah. Now you see, because the creators of that game did this Hulk game on the Xbox, on the first Xbox. That was really cool. It was that same idea, you've got all this power, And they were the ones actually who came up with the idea of him like getting pieces of a car and then using them for gloves. And then we saw it in that Edward Norton film.
Yeah.
Which, poor Edward Norton.
I don't feel bad for him. The guy wanted too much money.
Everybody wants too much money.
Oh, yeah. You hear
As
about...
I'm going to be in about 5% of this movie. I want more than everyone else.
Yeah. even though Robert Downey Jr. has the most lines.
Robert Downey Jr. needed the most money. And the guy they got to replace Edward Norton actually looks a lot more like Bruce Banner from the old TV show.
I always said that even though I thought the Avengers was poor overall, it was the only time I ever thought the Hulk and Bruce Banner were done right.
Yes.
And not that I don't like Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, but Mark Ruffalo has this meekness that Bruce Banner has always had that nobody has ever gotten right. He's not a go-getter. He is.
And I will say this:
he's the guy that hides in the corner.
This is gonna sound weird. His face looks most like the Hulk's face when the Hulk becomes the Hulk.
Yeah,
He's got like the squarest
really
kind of jaw and everything.
And his
Norton's head's like whoop, like just a V shape, and I'm like that becomes.
What? Yeah. He's just so slender.
Well,
and then when he becomes big,
they used the little balls and the little thing, and
yeah.
I mean, he actually played the Hulk.
Yeah.
So that's actually, I think that's the first time someone's actually done that.
Well, when I see the Hulk, I see him like mainly becoming bigger muscle and everything. I don't see his jaw like reforming.
Yeah, he doesn't. His facial structure doesn't change. He just gets bigger.
They actually did that for the first Hulk film they did. That was
just called Hulk.
Just called Hulk. It was the director of the Asian Ang Lee. He actually did the motion capture for the Hulk himself. When it's just because they usually got Lou Ferrigno later on. He did the capture for the Norton, and I think he did a little bit for the Ruffalo as well.
Yeah, I believe he did a little bit. I remember seeing his name attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Returning back to the original topic.
Yeah. Oh, what was the original?
The original.
I need to go.
When does a game call it quits? Okay.
I'm going to say one thing that's going to cause a lot of conversation in the next 4 minutes.
Oh.
Capcom.
Resident
Evil, Street Fighter, Mega Man,
DMC.
It might be time for Mega Man to just hang up the gloves. I don't think we've seen a good Mega Man game in.
I like Mega Man 10 because they made Mega Man 10. It was a sequel to Mega Man 9. It followed the classic style.
Really? 10 followed 9?
I mean, 10 wasn't a sequel to like X whatever because they made Mega Man like 1, 2, 3, 4. I think. 5 and then X? I'm not exactly sure. X came out. Mega Man X2, X3, X4, Mega Man 7. X7.
This really goes into what was happening with Japan for a couple of years now, which was the gaming gods, the big heavy hitters were changing. Because it used to always be Japan was making all these great games, and now it started becoming America and Europe, Canada was starting to make a lot more, and they were starting to control more of that market. So then when you look at these Japanese games, they just felt like they just couldn't
progress with the times.
They couldn't exactly, and you need to do that with a media, with entertainment. You have to progress.
And they've been trying to do that with the Resident Evil games. But
I will say Resident Evil's gameplay is one of the most fun third-person shooter gameplays I've ever played.
Yeah, see, everybody gives it.
It's just because it's tied to a storyline that is starting to fall apart.
Everyone gives it such shit that it's not scary anymore. Look, these guys have been fighting zombies for like.
If you want to scare, you're going to have to bring in someone you don't know.
Yeah,
and nobody's gonna like that. They're gonna be like, Resident Evil, where's my Chris? Where's my Leon? It's like you bring in some new person, no one's gonna like it because nobody's liked the new characters of the last 2 games.
They've been fighting zombies for 20 years now. They're not afraid. Chris wasn't afraid to begin with. He doesn't give a shit. He just breaks through walls and kills people.
I will say this. This may offend. Much of the hate for Resident Evil is completely fan-caused. It's caused by fans who aren't willing to let go of characters but want to be scared.
I mean, look at Resident Evil 5 where they gave them all that shit because
we're gonna bring in a new character, Shiva. I hate her.
Yeah. Well, and that Chris Redfield's in Africa killing all these black guys. That it's not made by an American. The game is not made by an American. It is not designed to be racist. It was just that they needed to get out of a North American environment. They did it before. They went to in Code Veronica. They went to the Russia.
Yeah.
Just because they were white, it was okay that they went over there and started killing a bunch of Russians.
Here's a question for you guys.
6, they went to China, right? Was it China? Yeah.
When do you think a character should be let go? Do you think a character gets to a point where
before it's hated?
Yeah. It's that fine line between dying a hero and living to see yourself become the hated character.
Because you got to think, like, do you think there are games where the franchise feels like it could continue, but the character just needs to change?
Oh, definitely. Resident Evil is one of those. I believe they could literally make a terrifying new Resident Evil game. It just wouldn't. It would have to not involve any character that we've seen before. Yeah. You can hint at the characters before. Maybe have it like years down the line, a futuristic Resident Evil where something has managed to slip through.
And now would be a great time because in 6, Chris was saying that he wanted to retire. Yeah. I mean, he's technically, isn't he?
It's like it almost seems like a sign from Capcom saying, "We want to let him go."
Yeah, I mean, he was saying he wanted to. He was saying he wanted to retire and just help train people for the BSAA. Yeah. But of course, Piers died, and now he's like, "Fucking shit! Now I have to actually do this." And Leon, I mean. What does he even do? He just kind of like...
He's just kind of...
He's a government agent. He's been a government agent since 4.
He's the intelligence guy. He just kind of... He doesn't need to be a spotlight. He works better underneath and behind the scenes.
I see it as this way. Chris is a military guy. Leon is like the guy they send in when they don't want explosions.
Yeah.
It's like, we can't have explosions in this country. We'll send Leon in. That country's wanting to fuck with us. Send Chris.
We can't afford to send Chris.
That sounds absolutely right. That sounds absolutely right.
Because every time he goes in, it's like an infiltration type of thing. You need to go in here and retrieve the president's daughter.
Yeah.
We don't want to start wars, though.
And I think the thing that I liked that Resident Evil 6 did was that no matter it depended on who you were playing, that the gameplay seemed to change.
Resident Evil 5 combat style in Chris's campaign. Resident Evil 4 mixed with 5 for Leon's, and then completely different for Wesker Jr.
Yeah,
Wesker.
Yeah, basically Chris was all action. Leon was he had a little bit of action, but
he had tight corridors.
Yeah, he had a lot more of that traditional kind of Resident Evil feel, and Jake was a bit of both. And Jake's campaign featured that a lot like what Resident Evil 3 had, that one main bad guy that just followed you the whole time. And
wasn't as memorable as Nemesis, but nobody's going to be as memorable as Nemesis.
Yeah,
because that was the first time that happened.
Yeah, nobody could be. Yeah, that's my main point, is that you can never compare something to the original because nothing will ever be as new and fresh.
Yeah. Unless you try to, and if you try to, people are going to bitch about it. They're just going to bitch.
But you kind of have to do that at some point. You really just kind of...
innovation that they need.
Because you know, like, okay, well, this franchise is kind of dead right now, but it could be really good, and you got to have some vital way of bringing it back, but, you know, that really begs the question, do you want new stuff, or do you want new stuff that's made from, you know, what came before? You know, just a reinterpretation.
But, you know, at the same time... You don't exactly want to reboot it.
You really don't. Yeah.
Especially with
that's like a bad
because the originals are still so good and so playable.
Yeah. Resident Evil's not the best example to use for that. The GameCube remake of Resident Evil 1 is goddamn the most scary game I've ever played in my entire life.
But they've already done it, and GameCube can now be actually considered old.
Yeah, so. That makes me sad.
But you know, I will say I did prefer the story of DMC over the original Devil May Cry. I thought they did a much better. I
feel like when a lot of these first started, it was less about the story and more about actually doing something new.
We're at time.
I accidentally went over time. So, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us,
guys. Geek Horizon.
Geek Horizon. You can find us all here doing our own little shenanigans, reviews, and videos and whatnot if you feel like it.
Mm-hmm. And visit us at GameGal.net.
Yes, I am Blue.
I am Marinus.
I'm Faison.
We'll see you guys around the internet.
Peace out, motherfuckers. Oh yeah, I have the thing to stop it.